Hello again, World History 2 students. Welcome to another edition of VidNotes video casts. We're on to lesson number 2. Please get out your VidNotes packet, Unit 1, The Modern World. And when you have that out, please turn to page number 4. Today we're going to be working from page 4 and page 5. On the upper left-hand corner, you should see the environment and refugees. And these are two modern world issues we will be addressing. You see the two photographs on your screen which show examples of these two issues. Before we dive in, let's review. Last lesson we talked about developed countries and developing countries. And we talked about the differences between these two. We talked about literacy rates, GDP, gross domestic product, and per capita GDP, the wealth of a nation. We talked about health issues involving life expectancy. We also talked about how rapidly our population is growing. And you see here how we have about 7 billion people in the world, according to this chart. 200 years ago, we only had about 1 billion people. So how are we dealing with this extensive population growth? Are we becoming overpopulated? Can we handle this amount of people? Or are our resources running out? That's what we've been talking about. Also, China and India make up 37% of the world's population. They are rapidly growing. China makes up 1.3 billion of the world. India makes up 1 billion of the world's population. The United States, we're at number 3, and we only make up 4.6% of the world's people. It just shows you how many people China and India have. And this is a pie chart that reinforces this idea of China in blue and India in green dominating the world population. Let's dive in now to the modern world's lesson number 2. With all of this population growth, what are the world's environmental challenges? We'll be talking about that. And our second essential question, why do the world's refugees migrate? Refugees are forced to leave their homes. Why? Here we go. What are the world's environmental challenges? Before we answer that, let's back up and say that rapid population growth leads to environmental challenges. However, we should also say that rapid population growth can be a good thing. With growth, you have the benefit of rising home prices. Your house increases in value. With population growth, there are more jobs to try to serve that growing amount of people. Also, the economy improves. Stock prices rise. Taxes increase. What I mean by that is people are greater. So with a greater amount of people, more people are paying taxes, and a government has more money to spend on its people. So that is an improvement in the economy. So rapid population growth is not all a bad thing, but there are challenges, and we're going to be talking about the environmental challenges today. And the first environmental challenge that we have been dealing with is global climate change. You see this graph from NASA from 1880 to 2000 shows there has been a trend upward in the surface temperature on the Earth, showing global climate change exists. Here's another map. This compares 1979 to the year 2010, and it compares the Arctic sea ice. Look at the amount of sea ice in 79, compare it to the year 2010. Our sea ice is melting, and we can say that's because of global climate change. Number 2 in the environmental challenge list, Pollution, both air pollution and water pollution, which affects our health. Remember we said China was one of the world's most populated countries? Well, China's dealing with a pollution problem. And I'm going to zero in on one city in China that is specifically dirty. Here's China. Here's the capital of China, Beijing. Southwest of Beijing is a city called Linfen. Now, spending one day in Linfen is the equivalent to smoking 3 packs of cigarettes just by stepping outside. This is the world's most polluted city, and it's an example of how we need to address the developing countries in the world and their environmental challenges. Number 3, deforestation is an environmental challenge. And you see this photograph here that shows deforestation, the cutting down of trees, which can lead to environmental challenges affecting our air supply. Number 4, animals' loss of habitat. That is an environmental challenge because when our ecosystem is thrown out of whack, when animals lose their habitat, everyone is affected by this. And you see this lonely polar bear, a victim of global climate change, a victim of that Arctic sea ice melting. So, in a nutshell, to review, the 4 environmental challenges: global climate change, pollution, deforestation, and animals' loss of habitat. These 4 lead to social challenges. People are affected by the environment. How? Well, these are 4 negative challenges: poverty, famine, migration, and poor health. And as an example, you see this farmer with his tool who cannot use the earth because it has dried out, the cracks of drought in the ground. If a farmer can't do his job, food cannot be created. That causes poverty and famine and poor health, and it might cause people to migrate, to travel out of a country and into another country, which affects a country because more people mean the government need to have services for those people. It's all connected here. It all goes back to the environment. Migration, as we just said, one of the challenges of a changing environment is people moving out of a place. And some of these people move out of a place by force, and that's called a refugee. So what is a refugee? A person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. So an environmental challenge, like a famine, would be a natural disaster. But refugees are also forced to flee because of instability in their country. And you see this refugee camp in Africa that's been organized by the UN, the United Nations. And one group, a nonprofit in Charlottesville, handles refugee issues. It's called the International Rescue Committee. Here's its logo here. Maybe you've seen it around town. And about 200 refugees move to Charlottesville each year through the International Rescue Committee. Where are these refugees from? They're from Iraq, Afghanistan, in the Middle East. They're from Nepal, in Asia. They're from the Congo, in Africa. All of these countries are unstable. There have been wars that are going on. Some of these citizens are not welcomed by their government. So the IRC brings them to Charlottesville and to 21 other cities in the United States so that they can be safe. It's important to make a distinction between what a refugee is and what an immigrant is. Immigration is moving into a country or a region, often by choice. A refugee leaves his homeland or her homeland not by choice, by force, because of a war or because of an environmental disaster. And that's the difference. Sometimes you have guest workers who stay in a country temporarily to work. And this is a controversial area because some guest workers never leave that country, and the government of that country might not want them there long term because they're costly and they may not pay taxes. It becomes a political issue. Guest workers help a country by filling a need in this country's economy. They work. Guest workers also are able to support their family by being employed. So there are two helps for guest working. It helps a country's economy and it helps the guest worker's family. What happens if a guest worker wants to stay in a country permanently? As I said, that's where the trouble comes in politically. There have been a recent migration of guest workers to America and Western Europe. And this example shows you Germany. And it shows you here in the center of Europe, all these blue arrows are different countries' guest workers coming into work in Germany. Poland has 147,000 guest workers coming into Germany. Romania, 91,000 guest workers. And as it says here, in the first 9 months of 2012, over 500,000 people immigrated to Germany from other EU, European Union member states. What did Germany think about that? Why Germany? Well, America and Western Europe, and Germany is included in Western Europe, have free market economies. These economies allow for higher standards of living and more political freedoms, desirable for people. And what Germany asked itself, are these immigrants a threat or a help to society? There's one side of this argument that says immigrants are a threat. And this debate is not only going around in Germany, the United States also has this political debate. And those who think immigrants are a threat say that immigrants are a fiscal, financial burden. They carry a lot of negatives. And illegal immigration on Californians. This shows you the argument that immigrants do not pay taxes. They cost a government, in this case California in the United States, a lot of money. Illegal aliens cost taxpayers $25 billion in state and local expenses. But they only pay $3.5 billion in taxes. So this is the argument that says immigrants are a threat. The other side of the argument says that immigrants are a help, and we stay with this example of California. Immigrant entrepreneurs, those who make their own businesses. This says in 2010, new immigrant business owners generated $34 billion in total business net income. And this also says that 33% of business owners in California are immigrants. So if you own a business, you create jobs for your state or your area, and that's a good thing. So this argument says that immigrants are a help. Okay, we've reached our summary question section. When you're done answering your 2 summary questions on page 5, you are done for today. Next lesson, lesson 3, we'll be talking about the idea of globalization, how the world has more connections than ever before. See you next time.